All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate everyone making time to talk to us this afternoon. This is the Housing Department's monthly community engagement series. Each month, we talk about a different topic that we share with the community, and we invite your questions at the end. The topic for this meeting today, is the emergency interim housing performance dashboard that the city recently launched and made public. We're going to have people in the housing department who are going to walk you through that dashboard, tell you its purpose and what it does and what it can tell you. And you, the members of the public, are welcome to view that dashboard anytime you want, so you can see how our emergency interim housing communities are performing. And before I turn it over to the people who will be presenting tonight, I just want to give you do a little bit of housekeeping here. For those of you who have questions and want to ask questions of the speakers, you please use the chat function, and you can send your questions to me, Jeffrey Scott or Jeff Scott, in the chat. And then after the presentation, I'll be reading those questions off, and the speakers will then be able to respond to all your questions. So please, again, use the chat function. If you have questions, put them in there, and I will read off all the questions to our speakers and get all those questions answered for you. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm now going to turn it over to Cupid Alexander. Cupid is Deputy Director in the Housing Department. And Cupid, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Isn't Jeff such a good host? So always happy to see Jeff. I want to thank you all for being here today. So we're going to take some time to walk through our emergency interim housing asset tracking dashboard. And I know more people are joining, so they'll kind of hear this as we go along. Both myself and my colleague Mai, we've done this several times. So this usually takes about 20-25 minutes, maybe less. Be sure to send Jeff Scott your questions so we can answer them. But I think I should start with the purpose of why behind this dashboard. So what it's meant to do is it's meant to show how the work we're doing is benefiting by creating transparency in where our assets are and how their occupancy is. The emergency housing dashboard was created also to manage the city's investments in sheltering spaces. At its core, it's about transparency and stewardship. So it gives us in the community real-time visibility into some of the key questions you all might have, which is how many units are online? How many units are occupied? Are we meeting the needs of the people we serve? And this is focused on the asset versus just the operations on site. So the dashboard gives us a gap at utilization. It sometimes can help us flag operational issues. It makes adjustments early, all of which helps us ensure our interim housing sites are safe and high quality and serving that purpose. More importantly, the dashboard isn't just internal, so it's also outwardly facing, which means partners, funders, community members can see how our resources are being used. This kind of visibility strengthens our public trust, we believe, shows we're good stewards of public dollars, and helps everyone stay aligned on the progress. And it actually helps us all lean in to some of the damages and some of the things that need to be repaired and fixed very transparently, just like with anyone who would have a house. These are public dollars. We want to make sure that you're seeing how we're utilizing them. The broader benefit is this. We're not just talking about tracking beds. We're talking about how our system is functioning overall and how we're all supporting residents and stabilizing, connecting to services and transitioning towards more permanent housing. So right now I'm going to have my colleague Mai share his screen, and he's going to walk you through our asset tracking dashboard. Just one more thing, as more units come online and we build more temporary sheltering spaces, we usually have a ramp up period. So during the ramp up period, anywhere from 30 to 120 days, we might not necessarily have the asset on board, because just like any apartment complex, just like anywhere that has a bunch of different units, we're usually like leasing those up, working with the operator, making sure that staff is currently aware of how to utilize these systems. But for those of you who are just joining, if you're here to learn about the Emergency Interim Housing Asset Dashboard, you're in the right place. If that doesn't sound familiar to you, then you're probably missing a meeting you need to be at. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mai. Take us through the asset dashboard. And just one more reminder, if you have questions, feel free to send them to Jeff Scott, Jeffrey Scott. He's going to be, you can send it to him in the chat. We're going to be focused on this asset dashboard and our asset tracking. Okay, Mai, go ahead.
Everyone, name is Manawin. Thank you, Cupid, for providing the purpose of the dashboard. Since Cupid provided the purpose of the dashboard, I'm gonna run you through on how to navigate it and how to read it. Let me show you my screen. Screen should be visible. So the first question will probably be, where's it located at? It's located on the City of San Jose Housing website in the data section, and it's called Emergency Interim Housing Dashboard. Once you click on this, you should have another tab open up, and this is your landing page. On the landing page, would take you to the overview of the interim sites. So now, how would you read this? So it's broken down by the key performance indicators. Each key performance indicator have a different tooltip. If you highlight it, it will explain what does it mean. What does it mean to you as a reader? Since these are key performance indicators that was identified by a housing leadership team. On its left-hand side, you have buttons to go to different reports. We will drill down into them as we go along. Then another option we have is breaking down by fiscal year. Right now, we have one current fiscal year, since this is a new program or dashboard that we implemented this fiscal year. We also have small icons that you might see here and there. If you highlight them, it will tell you what these icons are. In this case, this icon is indicating to you that you might want to check out the notes section for some data quality issue. So from here, you can slice this down by the fiscal quarter. This is City of San Jose quarter year. From here, you can pick from the different interim sites. Again, you might see small icons. In this case, this is an informational icon for two new sites. This is telling you that this will come online eventually, but right now it's undergoing data quality review. Then down here in this bottom left-hand side, you see the unit type. So this will provide you the different types of unit that we have at the different interim sites. If you just pick one, for example, it will break it down, only showing one location. So you have better visibility on how much unit is at each site. Then again, if I select everything, on this bottom right side down here, this current unit status. This will provide you what's going on as of the last time this dashboard was updated. So how do we see it last time the dashboard was updated? There's two ways to see this. We can go back to the main navigation page, which I'll take you there shortly, or we can look at the end date. So this is up to June 2nd. So this dashboard has been updated since June 2nd. So as of June 2nd, we know that 680 units are being occupied, 30 is in a vacant, not a variable, and 6 is currently vacant as of June 2nd. What does this status mean? When we highlight this or hover over the graph, you see another tooltip pops up. It will explain to you what each category means. Over here is a main thing we're looking at. We're looking at the utilization. In this case, go to read the title, it's utilization excluding inactive and reservation units. We're excluding this from the utilization calculation due to two issues that's out of the agency control. Now, as I mentioned, this button is on the left-hand side. Let's drill down into the red one first. The red one is going to reflect this current unit status here. So this question asks, what's going on with this 30 units? And this green one will indicate what's going on with the 6 units. So let's drill down to the red one first. So the vacant, not a variable. This will give us a better breakdown of what's going on per site level and what's going on a per unit level. For example, these are buttons that correspond to color down here. And for example, let's take a look at units in maintenance and offline. From here, we can get a list of how many units currently in maintenance, for example, and showing us 13 units. Of those 13 units is spread across these individual sites. And for offline status, there's 4 offline spread across these 2 sites, Evan Lane and Berryessa Supportive Park. And that's how you do this. And there's also a reset filter on the top right if you want to go back to the normal view. If you drone down too much and you want to go back to the overall site. Now we go back to the overview page. The overview page will take us back to the main KPI page. Now we're going to take a look at the vacant variable analysis. So this will provide us an idea of what's going on at each location, as in what unit is currently open. and the type of units open. Majority of the time, we do see longer days in status for units that are ADA and family sites. So I have for this page. Now your question might be, if it's updated on a weekly basis and this number doesn't appear to change, how can I check if stuff is actually happening to these units? We have something called unit or status change in the prior week. If you click on this page, it will provide you an option to select which site you want to take a look at and if it's moving along in the current progress. Is it moving status? Is the maintenance finishing? Did someone move out, etc.? This will ask you these questions. I'll go back to the overview page. Now we're going back to the main navigation page. As I mentioned, the main navigation page is helpful because it provides you the last time the program was updated and the last time the dashboard, when the last dashboard was last updated. In this case, the dashboard was updated on June 2nd at 7 p.m. So from here, we have another buttons that can bring you back to the KPI page and the other small reports. And there's another 2 sub-reports. If you highlight them, hover over them, it provides you a tooltip on what is the report supposed to help tell you, what can you learn from the report. In this case, before I take you there, I'm taking you to the notes section. On the top right side, you see the data gap explanation and just some update notes or key terminology that wasn't answered via tooltip, and you want to know more about the terminologies being used on the report. So I'm gonna jump to the data gap real fast. This is an area that we should cover. This right-hand side, site data risk, 3 different colors: green, yellow, red. Green means is low risk, red means high risk. What does that mean? It means we do not have the full historical data at this location. This is due to when this was implemented at the different locations. And this left-hand side will tell you how it affects the KPI page. I will leave you to read this another time. Now back, again, key terminology, it's just the different terminology being used and the updates that happen over a period of time. Just for the user to understand if there's anything changes. This is where you can check it. Now, another area that you might be interested in would be this monthly utilization. Before, the KPIs is showing you on a quarterly basis. Now you want to see on a monthly basis how the site is being utilized. In this case, we have a month-over-month comparison now to see how the city sounds is doing. In this case, we have 2 utilization. In order to get a definition now, if you hover over the graph, it will tell you the 2 difference. The main one we are measuring exclude reservation inactive days. The utilization includes the dark blue one includes other utilization, includes other units. So this provides us a picture of, for example, if CD San Jose is holding X amount of units, how is that impacting the site location? If there's a special project that we are trying to move encampment sites. So this is where leadership can take a deeper look on how we're impacting the utilization of the agency. Then go back to the main navigation page. Now, this date range utilization with unit detail, this is to provide you with more in-depth information if you want to see what's going on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. This is more for if you want to do research on how things are going, how things are changing. I don't encourage you to spend much time here unless you're trying to do your own calculations on how we come up with a utilization. It provides you total possible days, the days was occupied, etc. If you want a full understanding of how we came to our calculations in this KPI dashboard overview. If you want to come to understand of how this is calculated right here. We do provide information on the date range. And this concludes my presentation. I pass it back to you, Cupid.
Thanks, Mai. So before we go into it a little bit deeper, some of the operational standards that we're using are similar to what you use in low-income housing tax credit, similar to what you use in asset management of public housing, similar to what you use on any asset that you're going to manage as we're having this dashboard. So, in closing, we wanted to be sure we offer an opportunity. I'll hand it back to Jeff in a moment, but just want to remind everyone we collect consistent, regular reports. I know some of our providers are on here, so if you saw your name on there and you saw that it wasn't updated in the last couple days, we are waiting for data from you. We do have team members who go and train some of your staff so you can make sure that you understand how to utilize the tool. But we are really trying to make sure that this data is in service of the people. So this is just how we're managing the assets and being transparent about it. I did want to provide clarity. I put it in the chat a little bit ago, but Mai had mentioned that there are some units that are offline. Generally, you don't count that as a part of your vacancy if it sustains heavy damage. So if there was something where there was a fire, for those who are familiar with public housing and HUD, you would usually file this and say, this is a unit offline for damage. It doesn't count towards your occupancy requirements. Or if there is a unit that is going to be reserved for an emergency. So for those who are familiar again with asset management and public housing, asset management and low-income housing tax credits, things like that, we follow the same principles. The general difference is that we have participants, and these are not necessarily leases, and we don't charge rents. So there are fundamental differences that I wanted to call out, but in our methodology, the principles are generally the same in tracking which units are offline, online, and then Mai also brought up we take into consideration the total amount of units and utilization, no matter what the status is. That's where there's the dark blue line and the light blue line. One is going to give you how many units, if they were damaged, what is our utilization, excluding them, and then also including them. So that is something that we have. And then what we're really tracking has been directed to us by San Jose City Council and making sure that we're getting to 95% utilization. Again, for the principles of public housing and low-income housing tax credit, you all know that 95% would put you in high performance status. If you're doing a home key project, they're at 90%. So we are usually meeting or exceeding that. And we are tracking those. We're also tracking the unit damage. We don't have, as you all saw, any publicly identifiable information about clients on these. This is just about the asset. So we have standardized templates and tools that we help with data. And at this point, I don't think there's anything else that I really need to provide clarity on. So Jeff, let's open it up to a few questions. But I'll say again, for our provider, I see some of my colleagues on here. If you did not see your asset updated, it's because we are awaiting your data. We won't call out anyone, but we do need that that data updates because we will be able to publicly show what the utilization of the asset is, and we're required to have that accountability. So we're trying to provide that. Jeff, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Cupid. Thanks, Mai. Appreciate that. We do have a couple of questions here, so I'll read those off. But just to remind everyone, if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, please put it in the chat, send it to me, and I will be the one reading off the questions for Cupid and Mai. All right. I think a couple of these questions you may have already answered, but I just want to repeat them anyway, just to make sure that we don't overlook anything. So first question, what is the expected frequency of updates to the data in the dashboards?
Mai, do you want to answer that?
Yes, I can answer that. The frequency, the agency provide updates on a weekly basis to us, but the public facing dashboard is on updated on Mondays, multiple times on Mondays to make sure the data is being vetted and data quality is there before we post it to the public. Any more details to add, Cupid?
No, that's exactly it. And the purpose of that is because we know during the week there might be transitions of people going in and out. We also are tracking the unit vacancy length of time. So we want to have units turned that are online, meaning that they're not off for damage within 14 days. Again, these are principles for those who are, and I feel like I'm speaking to practitioners when we're trying to utilize the asset to make sure individuals have the first opportunity for housing. So we're constantly utilizing it. We want to be sure that we're tracking how long it's empty so we can get the unit turned and have it within 14 days. We update this every Monday. We go through our data validation because we want to be sure that we're accurately putting that up there, and we're making sure I get the information at the end of the week so I back and look at the vacancy rates, we go through this data exercise and then we post it for the community just so they can see on a week-to-week basis. It's not necessarily the same for congregate sheltering spaces that usually do day-to-day. We see a longer length of time that individuals are usually staying in some of our EIHs or emergency interim housing, but we get that frequency on a weekly basis. Jeff, next question.
All righty. So I know there's discussion, there was discussion in the dashboard about rooms that are offline due to damage. Does the dashboard now, or will it be tracking damage to rooms that are still occupied and the status of those repairs?
Yeah, no, it will not track because the asset management tool in and of itself, that tracking should be internal to the site operator. So if there is damage or if individuals are having damage, the site operator is who you engage with. For the units that are turned offline, we are looking at infrastructure repairs. So whether it's going to be capital improvements that are needed, think roofs, foundations, things like that, or regular wear and tear. That's part of what we're managing in regards to the unit turn. And then, of course, from our operators, we do see their submission of receipts for damages that they do have to repair. So we are tracking that, but the asset management dashboard, it only tracks that at the time that the unit is turned. So it's not here. It is tracked. I am proud of our partners who do that. You know, sometimes people, I mean, we all do a little bit of damage. But yeah, I hope that answered the question.
The next one, it's not really a question. I just want to clarification here. Because at the beginning of this meeting, I referred to this as the Emergency Interim Housing Dashboard. That's what we're calling it. But I just want people to know, and Cupid, you can elaborate on this if you'd like. When we talk about interim housing, we're talking about many different types of managed spaces, including what people may refer to as tiny homes, including hotels that have been converted into temporary housing, and also including safe parking sites. And so I just wanted to make that clear. I see a few comments here about RVs, and so I wanted to make clear for everybody on this call that we're talking about multiple different types of interim housing or interim steps before people move into permanent housing.
Yeah, and that's an important clarification, Jeff, because I think part of our dive into kind of onboarding community is to simplify some of these terms while keeping it true to its nature. So internally, we refer to this as different assets. So asset lines, asset management project for those who are familiar, AMPs, things like that. But that's not how we externally talk about it because we want to be sure that people are understanding what we're talking about when we're managing this at a per unit cost, meaning that no matter what the asset is, there is a per unit cost that we're tracking. We don't put on our dashboard those terms just so we can make sure that people are understanding. I think we can generally agree that when we're talking about an asset and we're talking about our emergency interim housing, we're talking about the portfolio of tools, including some of the home key sites. So we're just indicating how the use is going, just so people can get one snapshot in one place versus having to go on some sort of website and then track this all down in 17 different links. So I think it was a simplified way of us producing this and sharing it with the community because I think what exhausts people is when they feel like you're using too much jargon to explain a very simple concept, which is that there are sheltering spaces that people can go no matter what it's called, and that's the way that we approached it.
All righty. Next question for you guys. How many total units are there for the homeless that are currently covered by this dashboard?
Do we have that number on there? Because some of the internal things that I track are not only that number, but the ones coming online. And then I know that we have not, because there are two properties that are still leasing up. They're still under that 30 to 120 day window that we have not started to track on there. But go ahead, Mai.
Yes, it's on KPI page at the bottom left.
Do you mind bringing up the page since we
Oh
have a
yes.
moment, Mai? Yeah, bring up the page so we can share it with our community on where they can see this information. I think you did a great job of sharing that before.
So if you select our sites, it would tell you down here. Or it's probably easier if you add it up here. So if you add 680 plus 30 plus 6, that's how many units we have. Right now, this is excluding Monterey Branham and View del Oro. So if we do quick math, 710, 716 units.
Thank
This
you, Ma.
includes safe parking lots too.
Yeah, so this is going to include Santa Teresa, Berryessa, places like that. And as you all know, some of them, we have some that are coming online in the future. Like we said, Brenham and Monterey is not included there, but I believe I saw some of my Life Moves friends, so I'm sure that's coming soon. And then you all know that there's going to be Cherry, Cerrone, and the Rue Ferrari expansion. What we are still considering, I don't think will be on here, is that we have a motel strategy that we're connecting to get people into shelter. And I'm not quite sure yet if that is going to be included on this dashboard, because we have the expectation that this is going to be a very temporary stay and people will be exiting to more permanent housing solutions or longer sheltering solutions. But yeah, I believe that answers the question, Joe.
Yeah, and just to be clear, for the person who asked that question, so my just added up around 700 and change the units that are being tracked in this dashboard. And as he pointed out, Monterey, Branham, and Via del Oro aren't yet included in that because we're still filling those up. But right now, today, as we speak, there are over 900 units today that are available through our interim housing sites, our hotels that have been converted, and through safe parking. There are over 900 spaces today. And then the that person had a follow-up question to that, Cupid, and
Mhm.
that is in addition to how many units are there currently available, um, do these units apply towards what the mayor has consistently said things like he wants to get 1,000 new units coming online? Are the 900 units that we're talking about now part of that 1,000, or are they in addition to that 1,000?
So part of it is going to be, and remember the mayor announced this last year, a lot of this has been under his leadership. Part has been during this last calendar year. So that would be counting towards the 1,000. And we still have about over 200 more, 300 more coming between Rue Ferrari expansion, between Cherry, and between Cerrone. So Cerrone is an agreement with VTA. Cherry is an agreement with Valley Water. There will be several hundred units still coming in the pipeline with the expectation that they're going to be operational this year, and that will count towards that 1,000. It looks like we're going to meet and exceed that, especially in connection with the motels that are coming online due to the city's leadership and with our director, Eric Sullivan. So, yes.
All right, great. Okay, next question. The dashboard shows currently there's 6 vacant and available units. Is there a goal? Do you have a goal for the number of units or the percentage of units that are filled? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think, and I said this before, the principles are aligned with not only market principles, but affordable housing principles for those who have run low-income housing tax credit and public housing. Usually you want to be at about 95%, 96%. That's what's considered high performer. We know that there's going to be the evolution of people going into longer term solutions. We love to see it. We can't control when. I know many of you are advocates and you love to see your colleagues and some of the people in your neighborhoods get longer term housing solutions. When that happens, we want the units turned within 14 days, but that's when our providers go in and they see if there was any damage that was done. So we ask them to turn the units in 14 days. If they cannot turn the unit in 14 days because there's heavy damage, that's when we take it offline. But the purpose would have to be there was heavy damage beyond their control. We take the unit offline. But yes, the number one goal is to have 95% occupancy for the month. So on a week-to-week basis, that might change, but at the beginning, at the end of the month, and for a majority of the days during the month, they need to be occupied. So we're trying to get at 95%. And when we're having the unit turn, so when someone exits out of the unit, we're trying to get that turn within 14 days. For many of you who are operators, you know that that's aggressive. We put that aggressive timeline because the market principles, let's say this was not affordable housing for those who have market rate housing, you would just be losing money. What we lose is an opportunity to shelter someone. Again, our shelters, we do not charge rents or anything like that for the participants, but we still hold those principles so we can get the asset usable so we can shelter some of our neighbors and friends.
Okay, next question. you may not be able to answer this, Cupid, but I'll read the question anyway. Does Santa Clara County use something like this to monitor emergency interim housing throughout the county?
Say that again, Jeff.
Does Santa Clara County use something like this dashboard to monitor emergency
Oh,
housing throughout the county?
I don't know. I would have to ask KJ and Shelly. I would hesitate to answer on behalf of the county, but I'm sure that's something that we can probably relatively quickly figure out. Whoever that was, email Jeff, and Jeff connected to me, and then we'll try and reach out to the county and see what, because I know they monitor heavily. Usually you have requirements for those of you all who know what the agreements are with the state. Usually with any funding source, people are asking you, where is this dollar going? I'm going to be very transparent. There's a lot of fiscal reporting, especially in tight fiscal times like you're seeing right now. The reporting is left and right, up and down as to what is happening with the dollars because they're so limited. So I would not doubt they're tracking it. I don't know how though, but I wouldn't be able to speak to their dashboard.
Okay. I just put my email address in the chat so everyone can see that. I'll type it again in a few minutes. Jeff.scott@sanjoseca.gov. All right. Next question. This person says, I don't see First Street, excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't see First Street Sure Stay interim housing. And a couple of others as well. Will those be added?
So the status of First Street Sure Stay is a bit different. I know it's an EIH project. It has not been included. There is the possibility in the future of it being included, but I know that there's some negotiations going on in the background that I can't necessarily speak to. But that's the purpose of why it's not included into this. Happy to answer any other questions offline that I can. But hopefully in the future, should that status change, we're going to include it on there. But we are aware it is a home key project that's ran by the city of San Jose.
Okay. Next question is, how are the units that are discussed in this dashboard, how are these units paid for? Are the costs of these units paid for by the city? Does the county pay for any of these units? How are they paid for?
Yeah, so I'm going to try and simplify this because I'm thinking of the capital stat. So for those who are familiar, HAP, HHAP, you all can Google that, is one of the funding sources that we have. You all are very aware that the mayor and the city council were reappropriating Measure E. So Measure E is a part of it. We do have what's called ERF, Emergency Encampment Resolution Funds, ERF funding. If you all Google that, it was about $4.8 million that was given to the city of San Jose to administer housing solutions and outreach. So it is a bunch of different sources. We do work with the county. Some of it is going to be Housing Authority litigation funds that there was this agreement years ago, and it's called HALA, and we can use some of these funds to pay for on-site operations. So for those very familiar, it's just like a capital stack of different funds. And you have to talk about sources and uses. So you have to see if it's an eligible use for some of the funds, which is why we generally use some of our HHAP funds and some of our Measure E funds. For this purpose. The outreach dollars are going to be with what's called community development block grant funds and things like that, that fund people who go out and do outreach onto the streets. So without getting too in depth, that's generally some of the funds. And I just got a text from one of my colleagues in the grants team saying I said the right thing. So there's Jeff, you can always learn. I'm learning and serving, but yeah, that's generally how we pay for some of these things. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat, but we can hang on just for a moment in case anybody has any additional questions that they would like to ask. I'm also just putting a question just out of curiosity in there. How did you hear about today's meeting? If anybody wants to text me or chat me rather, and let me know how you heard about today's meeting. We just want to make sure that we're getting the word out about these monthly meetings to as many people as possible. So I'd love to know how people are hearing about these meetings. But as far as questions for Cupid and Mai, I am not seeing any other questions. So we'll just ask keep it in mind. Hold on just for a minute to see if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, and while we're talking about this, Jeff, and we can stay on just for a minute, like I said before, the asset management dashboard, um, there are some Power BI dashboards that are similar, but not in the way that we have it. So the unique part of ours is that we're trying to get these weekly updates, and it's a transparency tool. So really proud of Nate, Marcel, the team, our internal IT team that developed this. Because usually, like I said before, my experience has been in this type of work and in public housing where you have massive sites, but this is usually not a tool that people broadcast out. It's usually a back-facing tool. So for the city to share this transparently, it allows us to see where the dollars are going, especially since we're trying to connect some of the unsheltered to this sheltering opportunity through safe parking, through our home key projects, and through our emergency interim housing projects. So you're seeing all those lanes. And for those who joined, we call it EIH, but Jeff had mentioned that some of you might know them as bridge housing communities, emergency interim housing, safe parking. What we were tasked with and what response we get from the community is cut out the nonsense and tell us what you're doing with the dollars and simplify how you're talking about it, which is why we have this approach. So it can be something where you can understand where the dollars are going, and we can talk about this very transparently.
Okay, we do have another question for you. Will the department be adding data to this dashboard on unit turn and maintenance costs? Curious in particular about the units that need substantial or heavy repairs.
I think that that is something that we are considering. Usually we report that out. I would have to ask about that because we do, for those who know physical needs assessment, capital needs assessment, when you're projecting out how much something is going to cost, it's much easier on the front end to control those costs by seeing what some of the things that are needing to be fixed and basically bulk buying them. So what we are planning to do is that we will be going out with an RFP later this year to have maintenance handled by a third-party vendor or something like that, or I know our current operations partners do a great job on that. I don't know how much information is going to be shared about that, but I know we are tracking that, so I would have to get back to you on that. But for right now, it's not on that because we're primarily focusing on getting the utilization of the asset. But I wouldn't say that's out the window for whoever asked.
Okay, so I think, oh, we actually have another question about cost for this dashboard. Do we have a number, Cupid, that we quote that is the cost per unit now? And it doesn't specify whether it's operational or like per year operational cost or construction cost. The question is simply how much is it cost per unit?
Yeah, so the puck. I probably fed that to somebody like ask me about the puck. So the per unit cost is anywhere between 33 to about $48,000, and we've reduced that. The per unit cost includes meals, support services, security costs, unit turn. Generally, if you think of it as a principal, for those, you probably do it in your personal life. It's how much money am I getting? How much of it goes towards the cost of living? Can I reduce that cost? What are the things that I have to consider in my cost of living, aka where I pay for? So that's like the puck. For us, the puck would be what are the costs for operations? What are the costs for security? What are the costs for food? That projection. So the previous question about the projection of how much it costs to repair, all of those things are considered in a per unit cost. And that varies because you're going to pay a little bit more for a family or some site specific needs for seniors or those who might have a disability. Of course, you're going to have some wraparound services that single individuals who are healthy might not need. That will affect the puck. It's a very, like I am very practical here. Those who don't know me, I shoot it straight. When you're considering the needs of people, if they're going to be they have mobility challenges, you're going to have to make some adjustments. That's going to cost a little bit more. And so that's what affects the puck. And the per unit cost is a projection, so you can cost control to the best of your ability on the front end, which is what both myself and the director, Eric Sullivan, we obsess over. So we pay a lot of attention to these while still providing quality service. So we look at it per line item, per 6 month, per deliverable. And then, with some of our colleagues on this call, we have very uncomfortable conversations of how we can wring out the most efficiency that we can get without interrupting the quality of life.
And another question has come in, Keith, but it's a little bit outside the scope of the dashboard, but I think it's still relevant to the conversation.
Sure.
And that is, how are referrals coming in for our EIHs?
Yeah, so right now what it is, it's connected to our targeted outreach and engagement, and this is where the city has a little bit of flexibility. So for some of the EIHs, we have that preference, so the priority preference, a 1.5 mile radius, or some of the hot spots connected to the large visible encampments or within 1.5 miles of a new EIH that's there. So I would think of it as a tiered process. So think of it, if you have an EIH in your area, the city has most recently over the last year or two said, if you have an EIH in your area, there's a 1.5 mile radius that we will try to prioritize individuals. We will get their names, but we know the challenge with that is some of the people are a little bit transient and flexible on where they're going to be in their friends and with their street families, but we try to get their names and then we prioritize those individuals who are near the encampment, and then that remains a no re-encampment zone. Of course, people try to go back. We tell them, like, you can't really camp here. And then once that has gone away, it is connected to our targeted outreach engagement, which is like a regular wait list where we say, hey, we're going to go over to this encampment. We're going to put you on this list. I think the challenge that we all have, and you all know this, is basic math, which is like there's a limited amount of units, and our job is to try and get them full so people have somewhere to shelter. And then once people come off of it, we go back to our list. We add them to the available EIHs, and we also connect them to the county services. So the county has their community queue. They try to get them into permanent supportive housing or some sort of other housing that is for them, and that's kind of how we work together. That was the end of my answer, Jeff.
Thanks, Keith.
What are you trying to do to me, Jeff?
All right. Well, let me see. I think I have one more question here. So this, I think you've already answered it, but I think maybe it's worth repeating. So the overall utilization rate, this is a question. The overall utilization rate excludes units that are inactive, or reserved. Is that correct? So right now it's, I believe, 6 units. Is that correct?
Yes. So, but my pointed out, my in the background put up that dual bar chart that shows inactive and then inclusive of all the units. So I'll talk while my shares his screen. But what we do is that for our utilization rate, you generally take off offline units that are going to not be available because there was heavy damage, and that's an approval process. But as my goes to it down to monthly utilization comparison, we still track that. So you see the light blue and the dark blue. One is going to be including reservation and active unit days. So we're trying to make sure that we are tracking in one way and the other total utilization. This is it's generally a principle for reporting utilization because people usually want to say, if there is damage, thank you, Maya, you can take that off the screen. If there is damage, what are the damages? How long are they damaged? Why are they damaged? And then you usually take that offline so you can show here are the ones that are available, because what happens is that people will come to the chart and they'll say, this unit is offline for a month. Why? And we're like, that one's heavy damage. A car ran into it. I recently used to work in Houston as a chief operating officer for a huge housing authority. It would be flood damage. And we'd be like, there's no one who can go in there. So the principle behind it is that if there's heavy damage, you would take it offline. Or if there's an emergency and you have them because there's a flood, you would take them offline so people wouldn't think they're available. And then you would hold them for a specific purpose. So that's the principle behind our methodology in this. Jeff, I think that answered the question.
Great. Thanks, Cupid. All right. I don't see any additional questions, so we're going to wrap it up, and people can leave now. This meeting is going to remain open. This line will remain open for a few more minutes, and if anybody wants to offer up how they heard or where they heard about this meeting, again, that would be great. That'd be welcome data for us. And then I'm going to paste my email address one more time into the chat. If you have any questions, you want to follow up on this discussion, or if you have any questions about anything else in the housing department, feel free to email me anytime, and I can get back to you. So there's my email address one more time. And so with that, we're wrapping up the meeting for this month for tonight. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Cupid and Mai, for informing us about the dashboard.